That, of course, was Mr. Bob Dylan. The times they are a-changin'. I see a direct line between the lyrics of that song and the great poet and activist Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who we honor today on KBFG 107.3 Low Power FM for North Seattle and streaming over the World Wide Web at kbfgseattle.org/listen. We are listener-sponsored, all-volunteer community radio. We are bringing it to you every Saturday morning live on our program Open Airwaves. This morning I'm hosting. I'm Eric Muhs, and I will be joined by my talented and brilliant partner, Gabriella Gutierrez y Muhs, author, poet, and professor at Seattle University. And we are going to read some Ferlinghetti. We're going to have other people read and do some remembrances and try to place Mr. Ferlinghetti in the history of poetry and the history of the United States. Before we get into that, though, let's just talk a little bit about what we're doing here. This is KBFG. We've been on the air about 3 years, and I am broadcasting to you from my socially distanced bunker. We do have an actual studio, physical studio, in the third floor of the Jack Straw Foundation building, the U District. Haven't been using it a whole lot in the pandemic, and certainly with today's technology, it's possible to create shows on a laptop. We even have a volunteer who does it on an iPhone, and it's possible to broadcast live from any place, essentially, that you got a table and a laptop and some internet. And that's what I'm doing right now, broadcasting from home. We'll be with you from 9 to 11, remembering Lawrence Ferlinghetti. KBFG is always looking for more folks who are interested in doing programming and representing themselves and their community's point of view. The best way to get in touch with us is over our website. Again, that's kbfgseattle.org. We've got a contact form there, and we'd love to help you get started. Our emphasis is really on local. What can we bring you as a community radio station that you won't even hear on the NPR affiliates, for example? We do a lot of local music. I've got a show of my own called The Secret Word. Random did 2 years worth, 104 episodes of that, and lately I've been preparing a Hawaiian music show because that's a particular interest of mine. So that's the kind of thing you can get into. Hit us up on our website. Well, hope things are going well for you. The sun is out this morning, unusually for Seattle. It's a beautiful day, and we've been doing a deep dive into Ferlinghetti. I thought I would start, since my erstwhile partner has not yet joined me in the studio. I think she's probably getting another cup of coffee. This is very early. Oh, they're knocking on the door. Well, I'm going to play you about a 9-minute piece from we might think of him as a fellow traveler, although he was a teenager, 14 years old, when he was first read Ferlinghetti and was inspired. This is the actor, author, activist Peter Coyote. Very interesting man in his own right, and he's got about a 9-minute remembrance of Ferlinghetti. So we're going to start with that, and we'll get Dr. Gutierrez in the studio, and we'll get into more of Ferlinghetti's poetry and who he was. All right, Peter Coyote on KBFG 107.3 Low Power FM for North Seattle, streaming over the World Wide Web at www.kbfgseattle.org/listen. In memory of Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Whoop. Didn't turn off the Bob Dylan. Okay, good thing to check. In memory of Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Peter Coyote.
Hello, everyone. My name's Peter Coyote, and you might know me as an actor or a writer, or from some of my Dharma talks as a Zen Buddhist priest. in that last capacity, I did memorial ceremony this morning for Larry Ferlinghetti, who died yesterday. And I wanted to talk about him just a minute because to me he was an exemplar of what an individual can do by being constant, by being dedicated, by having a high and fixed intention. I discovered him when I was about 14 or 15 years old through his book, Coney Island of the Mind. And at that point, I was developing a kind of counterculture stance. And here was this adult that was talking my language and kind of authorizing my wilder emotions and perspectives and ways of looking at the world. And through following him, I got introduced to the beats. I read Howl, which he published, Allen Ginsberg's poem. I first read and heard of Gary Snyder, who later became a teacher and a friend. And he was a kind of lodestone bringing me to California for the first time in, I was 16, so it would have been 1957. Driving out here to see the Coexistence Bagel Shop and City Lights books and feeling like I'd come to a kind of bohemian Mecca. And as fate would have it, I came out to San Francisco again for graduate school to study poetry and at San Francisco State Creative Writing Department. And in the course of being here, I don't know exactly how or why, but my life became very enmeshed with poets. Michael McClure, James Kohler, Lenore Kandel, Gary Snyder, later Jane Hirschfeld. There was something about poets and me that resonated. And Lawrence was too old for me to be a pal with or to hang out with, but he was always genial when I met him. And when I first came and I found that it was a kind of unofficial policy to allow poets to steal books from his bookstore, I was flabbergasted. I thought that was great. So we stayed in touch on and off through the years, and I was humbled and honored, really, when he asked me to read his autobiography as an audiobook, which I did, which, true to his bohemian roots, was created without punctuation. So I'm not sure that all the solos that I took in print and language were what he intended, but he did tell me he liked it, and I loved doing it. But what it made me think about was something I talk about in Buddhist lectures all the time, which is fundamental intention. And Lawrence had this fundamental intention of telling the truth, of fairness, transparency. He was who he presented himself to be. And he followed this day by day, step by step, even before creating City Lights Bookstore, which cost him and his partner $500 each to open. And when I talk to people who are interested in the study of Zen, I like to remind them that the only thing they can control in this universe is their intention. But it takes a lot of practice. It's an untrained puppy. It's a monkey. So anyone who's ever tried to house train a pet knows what you can expect. And meditation is the kind of ideal tool for slowly, patiently focusing the mind, slowing it down, integrating it with the body so it doesn't kind of hook us by the neck and lead us off camera. So Lawrence is emerging as a symbol to me today for having done that. He was 103 years old, and he had a very rough life as a child. He was in an orphanage for a while, and he was taken to France, where French became his first language, even before English. Was in the service, but he had this idea of being an artist and of using his skills with language to help other people, and he did that completely consistently. So it doesn't sound like so much to say fix your intention on something and be constant, follow through with it. But if it's a path with a heart, as Don Juan used to say in the Carlos Castaneda books, it will continue to generate a good life and good feelings. Will continue to pay you back. And I think of Lawrence as a bohemian, as a progenitor of the Beats. And I think of the Beats as the progenitors of the diggers and the hipsters of the 60s. And it pleases me to be part of a cultural continuity which spawned so many works of art, brought so many people into public focus, did so much to counter America's materialistic obsession with a spiritual life, with spiritual considerations, and with unvarnished truth. So there's no way that I can settle my debt to him, but I'm at the age of 80, and Lawrence has been in my life since I was 14 years old. And I'm simultaneously sad today that I'm not going to see him walking around in the starlight again. But I'm so grateful to have had a mentor and a teacher and an exemplar that gave me the courage to leave the comfy suburban life that was ordained for me and to throw my lot in with wildness, with Buddha mind, with nature and nature spirits and the men and women who observe and honor it. So at the end of the Heart Sutra, which is a kind of primary Buddhist text, where we describe emptiness, the core Buddhist conceit that things don't have a fixed internal self. We say this mantra to remind ourselves of the entire Heart Sutra. And the mantra goes, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi, Svaha. And what it means is gone, gone, gone beyond beyond. And Bodhi means awakened. And Svaha is kind of like done. So I say that again. Lawrence has left the world of form. I call on all wisdom beings, all compassion beings to guide him, to see that he is free from suffering, to see that he is filled with loving kindness, to see that he is happy and at peace, and that his karma may be completely fulfilled. Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi, Svaha. Goodbye, Lawrence.
That was Hosho Peter Coyote. You may know him from many, many movie roles. Remembering his friend, his mentor, his exemplar, Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Ferlinghetti was a veteran. He was an orphan. He was an author. He was a poet. He was an activist. He was a publisher. He was a bookstore founder and owner. He owned City Lights bookstore, the iconic bookstore in the heart of San Francisco. Dr. Gutierrez and I have been in there many times over on North Beach, and he was a publisher. We'll get into his first foray into publishing with Allen Ginsberg's epic poem and epic obscenity trial for the publishing of Howl. But we'll do that a little bit later. I'm going to bring in Dr. Gutierrez now. You are listening to KBFG 107.3 low power FM for North Seattle and streaming over the World Wide Web at www.kbfgseattle.org/listen. We are remembering the life and life work of Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who died, Mr. Coyote said, at the age of 103. I thought it was 101, so we're going to research that. He certainly lived a long, long life and passed away this week. And just a monumental life of activism, avant-garde working class activism, as I heard Allen Ginsberg describe it in something I was researching earlier. Dr. Gutierrez, are you there?
Yes. Well, he was born in 1919, so neither Peter Coyote nor you are right.
102?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say 102, and I think it was June or something like that. I'm not sure exactly the month. His mother was a French, Jewish, Portuguese, Sephardic Jew, actually, and his father was Italian. So it says officially that he was 101 years old, but almost 102. Let's say that. It's significant because he basically to live 100 years. Who can live 100 years? A whole century and impact 2 centuries. And the poets, I'm a poet, and the poets we are today come from these men. People like him that actually embraced all of Latin America, embraced the incredible city that San Francisco is, that embraces itself as a very Latino, very Italian, very multicultural city, and cosmopolitan, of course. But his story is very, very sad, and it's also a very lucky story. He was, his mother was basically put in a mental institution right after he was born. His father died 6 months before his birth, and the mother was committed, and then Aunt Emily was the one that raised him, and she took him back to Strasbourg to live. So yes, French was his first language, which is another part of who he was. He was a citizen of the world. He embraced the other. He embraced other languages. He taught and tutored French for a long time. He was in an orphanage when his aunt didn't have a job when he was 5 years old. And she ended up working for the Sarah Lawrence, the family, that the father who founded Sarah Lawrence College. And so I say he was lucky because he could have been like others, like, Allen Ginsberg didn't live as long as him, who had to survive, not the poor poet, the discredited poet, the crazy man, the hoodlum. That's how a lot of poets were seen at the time. But he had other privileges because he came from Europe as well. He was raised over there. And you have something in common with him. Well, you have a lot of things in common with him, Eric Muhs.
In researching Ferlinghetti, I see so much of the intellectual space that I exist in.
Mm-hmm.
As I said in my description of this show on the KBFG Facebook page, this man, not single-handedly, but certainly played a pivotal role in sweeping out a space on the floor where people could object to to consumerism,
Absolutely.
to the Vietnam War,
to poetry as it stood, in an ivory tower. He brought it down from the ivory tower, and, like Roque Dalton, like all these other Latin American poets, gave it to the people. He was very much influenced by Pablo Neruda, by the way.
And I would say that in 2021, anyone in the United States that is pursuing a life, not necessarily a career, just a life in music, in art, in literature, in poetry, in intellectual pursuits, in truth, in beauty, owes a straight line ancestral debt to Lawrence Ferlinghetti and what he did and what he created for other people to do.
Because he was also a painter. We keep saying
Indeed.
Art, but he really spent a lot of his time painting.
And a business person, but a business person in pursuit of, keeping the business afloat, but also the business was to keep writers and artists, poets afloat and in the public sphere.
What I really liked, what Peter Coyote said, what I liked about what he said is the intention. That's so important. That we are not, our politics are not like a bracelet that you take off. Everything he did was in relation to other people.
I would like to, if it's okay with you, Dr. Gutierrez, I have, I think, two pieces, not very long. I have Ferlinghetti reading his very famous poem, "The World is a Beautiful Place."
Mm-hmm.
And I also have him entering the city of Nagasaki post-World War II and learning about it. And we'll have more to say about both of those. But so one of these is going to be a very famous Finnish piece of his, and the other will be his comments as a truth seeker. This is KBFG 107.3 low power FM for North Seattle and streaming over the World Wide Web at www.kbfgseattle.org/listen. We are remembering on our live Saturday morning programs from 9 to 11 a.m. every week. This week we are remembering Lawrence Ferlinghetti, poet, author, activist, publisher, painter, genius. Who passed away this week. And I'm joined by Dr. Gutierrez y Muhs, professor, poet, and author who works at Seattle University. And I'm Eric Muhs, and we're happy to have you with us. Here's Lawrence Ferlinghetti, "The World is a Beautiful Place," one of his most famous poems. Get that tuned up here. Here we go. The world is a beautiful place.
I'm recording these poems in the editorial office of City Lights Bookstore, San Francisco, with some traffic noise which may punctuate the poems. The world is a beautiful place to be born into, if you don't mind happiness not always being so very much fun. If you don't mind a touch of hell now and then, just when everything is fine, because even in heaven they don't sing all the time. The world is a beautiful place to be born into, if you don't mind some people dying all the time. Or maybe only starving some of the time, which isn't half so bad if it isn't you. Oh, the world is a beautiful place to be born into, If you don't much mind a few dead minds in the higher places, or a bomb or two now and then in your upturned faces, or such other improprieties as our name-brand societies prey to, with its men of distinction and its men of extinction, and its priests and other patrolmen, and its various segregations and congressional investigations, and other constipations that our fool flesh is heir to. Yes, the world is the best place of all for a lot of such things as making the fun scene and making the love scene and making the sad scene and singing low songs and having inspirations and walking around looking at everything and smelling flowers and goosing statues and even thinking and kissing people and making babies and wearing pants and waving hats and dancing and going swimming in rivers on picnics in the middle of the summer and just generally living it up. Yes, but then, right in the middle of it, comes the smiling mortician.
And that was Lawrence Ferlinghetti reading "The World is a Beautiful Place." Happy at first, positive. I'm reminded of all those folks that like to end their emails with "life is good" or some version. I've even heard it described as a culture of toxic positivity. If you're negative in any way, you're not a good employee, you're not a good citizen. Be happy all the time. Well, I'm going to pivot right over to I found this 3-minute piece. It's a clip from a biographical documentary you may want to look up, Ferlinghetti, A Rebirth of Wonder. He is going to talk about visiting the atomically devastated Japanese city of Nagasaki. Rather than perhaps blame atoms, maybe we should be blaming war and consumerism. But how that turned him into a lifelong pacifist. And then we'll talk a little bit about that and read some other poems. But here he is talking about, not reading a poem, Lawrence Ferlinghetti talking about entering Nagasaki.
Well, when I was graduating from Chapel Hill, all the guys I knew were volunteering for the armed services. It was the only socially acceptable thing to do. I had never heard of a conscientious objector. On the East Coast, we didn't have such things as far as I knew. I was in D-Day, June 1944. We were in an armada of at least 1,000 ships, and we were the smallest U.S. commissioned vessel, USS Subchaser 1308. It's a 110-foot wooden ship with 30 men and 3 officers. We were on the anti-submarine screen. We didn't land. We could see all these doughboys getting shot up on the beaches, but we were much safer being in the Navy. Well, we had a camera on board in a little camera lab, and we took a lot of amateur pictures. We didn't have time to take many. I was a skipper, and we were steaming in this huge convoy. So we all came together just as dawn was breaking when the whole fleet headed for the beach and started debarking the troops. The sea is calm tonight off Dover Beach. The birds at dusk cry out syllables of some deconstructed word we are yet unable to decipher to explain existence. And they lift the last light with their wings, keeping the secret. When we finally did get back to England, that fall, the fall of 44, I got orders to go back to the States and then cross the Pacific toward Japan, and we were loaded with 5,000 troops. We were supposed to be an invasion force. took a train to Nagasaki one day, and it was totally open. There was no guards or anything keeping people out. Of course, this was maybe 6 or 7 weeks after the bomb was dropped. They'd cleaned up the site somewhat, and they walked around in this like a 3 square mile mulch of fused ruins, like human flesh fused to a teacup, and bones and hair sticking out of this mulch. Every single building flattened and pulverized. When you realize the whole city, it just disappeared. It made me an instant pacifist, no doubt about it. Up to then, I was totally politically naive. I was a good American boy, Boy Scout. We never questioned being in the military service. Of course, this is World War II, which is called the Good War. And so there was no discussion about whether we should be in the war or should we have dropped the bomb. Years later, after I became more politically literate, I came to the conclusion we never would have dropped the bomb if the Japanese had had a white skin. It was a monstrous racist act.
And that was Lawrence Ferlinghetti. We're celebrating today the wonderful 100-year-old poet, activist, painter, publisher, bookstore owner, exemplar, mentor. And I've got Dr. Gabriella Gutierrez y Muhs in the studio, and I think she's got
Mexican visual beatitudes, Beatitudes Visuales Mexicanas. It's actually titled in Spanish.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I have he's got some great sort of 1 or 2 liner quotes, and I thought that might be what you had here, but this is actually Beatitudes modeled on the is that the Sermon on the Mount from the Bible? I forget what book it's in, but this is.
And a lot of poets have published Beatitudes, so he's not the only one. But I really like that the title. This was published in 1975 for the first time, so he would have been in his 50s. Something that is marvelous to me and just so beautiful is with his bicultural mind, because he grew up between us as a child, as a small child, between Europe, between France and the United States, back and forth. He has a keen sense of observation, of everything, of objects. And this is what, of course, him and Pablo Neruda have in common, to be able to write about a horse, or anything else and make it poetry. This is about his trip to Mexico. He traveled to Cuba also in the early 50s and was very supportive of the Cuban Revolution. And that's where he met Pablo Neruda. Beatitudes Visuales Mexicanas. Autobús on Paseo de Reforma with destination signs. Bellas Artes Insurgentes. Exactamente. Just what's needed. Insurgent arts. Poesía insurgente. This is not it. 1. Bus to Veracruz via Puebla and Jalapa. Adobe house by highway with no roof and one wall, converted with words. La luz del mundo. The light of the world is what that means. 2. Passing through Puebla late Sunday afternoon. A band concert in a plaza next to Ferris wheel. I have passed through many places like this. I have seen the toy trains in many amusement parks. When you've seen them, all you've seen one. 3. Halfway to Jalapa, a great white volcano, snow peak looms up above the hot altiplano. White God haunting Indian dreams. 4. A boy and 3 burros run across a stubble field, away from the white mountains. He holds a stick. There is no other way. 5. Deep yellow flowers in the dusk by the road, beds of them stretching away into darkness. A moon the same color comes up. 6. As the bus turns and turns down the winding hill, moon swings wildly from side to side. It had had too many pathetic fallacies written about it to stand still for one more. 7. In Jalapa, I am a head taller than anyone else in town. A foot of flesh and 2 languages separate us. 8. At a stand in the park at the center of Jalapa, I eat white corn on the cob with a stick in the end sprinkled with salt butter, grated cheese, hot sauce. The dark stone Indian who hands it to me has been standing there 3,000 years. 9. I'm taking this trip from Mexico City to the Gulf of Mexico and back without any bag or person, only what I can carry in my pockets. The need for baggage is a form of insecurity. 10. 2 hours in this town and I feel I might live forever. Foreign places affect me that way. The tall church tower tolls its antique sign, pray. 11. In early morning, in the great garden of Jalapa, with its terraces and immense jacaranda trees, pines and palms, there are blackbirds with cries like bells, and others with hollow wooden voices like gourds knocked together. The great white volcano shimmers far off, unreached by the rising sun. 12. Brown men in white palmetto cowboy hats stand about the fountains in groups of 3 or 4, their voices lost to the hollow-sounding birds. Along a sunlit white stone balustrade, student lovers are studying each other, novios awaiting the day. The sun beats down hot and melts, not the mountain. 13. On the bus again to Veracruz, dropping down fast to flat coast, a tropical feeling. Suddenly coffee plantation and palms, everything small except the landscape, horses the size of burros, small black avocados, small strong men with machetes, each still saying to himself, Me llamo yo.
That made me think of a trip we took long ago on the bus down to Veracruz, and you come down out of the mountains and it's suddenly tropical. I think we arrived at dawn, and to the main square, and the birds were just so raucous, and we were so tired and so hot.
He doesn't mention the music. There's a lot of typical things that, when you think of Veracruz, you think of the marimbas, which are playing 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
But I like that his poet eye is looking at the 3 burros, and other things.
Yeah, and I see the previous clip that we played, that he went to Nagasaki to look for himself and to report and to actually feel for himself what took place there. It reminded me of a equally awful experience that we undertook when we were in Poland. We took a day to go to the museum at Auschwitz, and I think we were able to stay there for about an hour and a half before we couldn't take it anymore. But it was a similar kind of truth seeking.
Yeah, I wouldn't have given that up ever, having been there and seeing all that reality. But it was hard to swallow. But I wanted to go back and say, of course he sees this way. His BA is in journalism. He's a journalist.
Yeah.
So there's the keen eye, what's happening here.
Yeah, some of his first published writing was actually sports journalism at the University of North Carolina. So you are listening to, I'm Eric Muhs, and with me in the studio bunker in our remote hidey hole location is Dr. Gabriella Gutierrez y Muhs, poet, author, professor at Seattle University, and we are remembering Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who died this week. The iconic, and it is an understatement to say influential. Influential in the same way that electricity is influential.
I like
just
that.
His way of knowledge pervades everybody who's ever said to themselves, now wait a minute.
And this seeing the world as if for the first time, as if it were a gem.
Yeah. I have a poem queued up.
Okay.
This is actually...
I have that one too.
Oh, do you? Fairly recent. It's... he was apparently invited to Delphi, Greece. Of course, it's a modern city now, but it was also the historic site of the famous temple where there was an oracle. And this has been, I've seen the oracle at Delphi in many, many movies, given the Hollywood treatment where it's somehow connected, it's some version of a Marvel comic book hero. But nevertheless, the oracle at Delphi was
the most important shrine in Greece for a long time.
And a place to go to ponder the future, seek advice about the future, receive metaphors about the future that could turn into wisdom. And he was invited there and read this poem at the UNESCO World Poetry Day in 2001. To the Oracle at Delphi. Great Oracle, why are you staring at me? Do I baffle you? Do I make you despair? I, Americus, the American, wrought from the dark in my mother long ago, from the dark of ancient Europa. Why are you staring at me now in the dusk of our civilization? Why are you staring at me as if I were America itself, the new empire vaster than any in ancient days, with its electronic highways carrying its corporate monoculture around the world, and English, the Latin of our days? Great Oracle, sleeping through the centuries, awaken now at last and tell us how to save us from ourselves, and how to survive our own rulers. Who would make a plutocracy of our democracy in the great divide between the rich and poor, in whom Walt Whitman heard America singing? O long silent Sibyl, you of the winged dreams, speak out from your temple of light as the Sirius constellations with Greek names still stare down on us as a lighthouse moves its megaphone over the sea. Speak out and shine upon us the sea light of Greece, the diamond light of Greece, far-seeing Sibyl, forever hidden. Come out of your cave at last and speak to us in the poet's voice. The voice of the fourth person singular, the voice of the inscrutable future, the voice of the people mixed with a wild soft laughter, and give us new dreams to dream. Give us new myths to live by. Yeah. That was Lawrence Ferlinghetti reading on March 21st, 2001 at the UNESCO World Poetry Day. We are remembering Lawrence Ferlinghetti today on KBFG 107.3 Low Power FM for North Seattle and streaming over the World Wide Web at www.kbfgseattle.org/listen. This is our every Saturday 9 to 11 live program, Open Airwaves. Today I'm hosting. I'm Eric Muhs. I'm joined by Dr. Gabriella Gutierrez y Muhs in our bunker, and I think she's got another Ferlinghetti poem queued up.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about joy. Peter Coyote talked about intention. That was in a lot of these beat poets. We call them the beat poets, but really he preferred he preferred to call his poetry open wide poetry. And that is from a quote from Pablo Neruda that told him that he loved their open wide. Open wide, why? Because these people are, for once, in relation to the world, right? It's not only the blades of grass, right? It's the entire world. It's Greece. He's 82, Eric, when he's reading this poem that you just read. He's 82 and traveling to Greece at that time. So
amazing.
Yeah. But I want to read a poem called Dog, simply. It's one of and last time we had a program on Pablo Neruda, which I'm sure you can look up. We had a lot of fun, but Pablo Neruda also had a poem to his dog. So I wanted to read this one to let you know that they're in communication in their poetic narrative. The dog trots freely in the street and sees reality, and the things he sees are bigger than himself, and the things he sees are his reality. Drunks in doorways, moons on trees. The dog trots freely through the street, and the things he sees are smaller than himself. Fish on newsprint, ants in holes, chickens in Chinatown windows, their heads a block away. The dog trots freely in the street, and the things he smells something like himself. The dog trots freely in the street, past puddles and babies, cats and cigars, pool rooms and policemen. He doesn't hate cops. He merely has no use for them. And he goes past them and past the dead cows hung up whole in front of the San Francisco meat market. He would rather eat a tender cow than a tough policeman, though either might do. And he goes past the Romeo Ravioli factory, and past Coit's Tower, and past Congressman Doyle of the Un-American Committee. He's afraid of Coit's Tower, but he's not afraid of Congressman Doyle, although what he hears is very discouraging, very depressing, very absurd to a sad young dog like himself, to a serious dog like himself. But he has his own free world to live in, his own fleas to eat. He will not be muzzled. Congressman Doyle is just another fire hydrant to him. The dog trots freely in the street and has his own dog's life to live and to think about and to reflect upon, touching and tasting and testing everything, investigating everything without benefit of perjury, a real realist with a real tale to tell and a real tale to tell. It with a real, live, barking, democratic dog engaged in real free enterprise, with something to say about ontology, something to say about reality, and how to see it and how to hear it, with his head cocked sideways at street corners, as if he has just about to have his picture taken for Victor Records, listening for his master's voice and looking like a living question mark into the great gramophone of puzzling existence, with its wondrous hollow horn, which always seems just about to spout forth some victorious answer to everything.
And so wonderful.
Yeah.
What is the dog thinking? And I was, we had a great dog, really the first one we had together when our kids were small, Chowder. And very early on, I remember, it just made me laugh so much. You started talking about the philosophies of Chowder, the way, not just does he come when you call, but what is he thinking and what are his motivations for doing what he does. And dear listeners, we, our younger son, who is now 22, about 2 months ago brought home a puppy, and that puppy has been ripping us up,
kicking our asses,
ripping us up, and ripping up the house. And I just laughed at the inner mental world that he lays out. What is this dog thinking? What is it doing? It really was pretty funny. I have, and we're going to return to some of Ferlinghetti's perhaps more political work in short order, but and this poem came up during my search. It's not one that was familiar to me, but I have to give it a whirl. After the dog poem, we've got to go to baseball and hear Ferlinghetti's observations on baseball. So we'll get to that in a moment, but you are listening to KBFG 107.3 low power FM for North Seattle and streaming over the World Wide Web at kbfgseattle.org/listen. We are all volunteer community radio. If you are interested in participating with us, hit up our website, kbfgseattle.org. We've got a contact form there. We'd love to help you get going on a program of your own or a program that represents your community. This is Open Airwaves, live radio on our station. Every Saturday morning from 9 to 11, we are celebrating the life and work of Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who passed away this week. Here is Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I expect this is him reading his poem, Baseball Canto.
It's the World Series, and this is a former World Series team. Baseball Canto. Watching baseball, sitting in the sun, eating popcorn, reading Ezra Pound. And wishing Juan Marichal would hit a hole right through the Anglo-Saxon tradition in the first canto and demolish the barbarian invaders from Los Angeles. When the San Francisco Giants take the field and everybody stands up to the national anthem with some Irish tenor's voice piped over the loudspeakers, with all the players struck dead in their places and the white umpires like Irish cops in their black suits and little black caps pressed over their hearts, standing straight and still like at some funeral of a Blarney bartender. And all facing east, as if expecting some great white hope or the founding fathers to appear on the horizon. But Willie Mays appears instead in the bottom of the first, and a roar goes up as he clouts the first one into the sun and takes off like a foot runner from Thebes. The ball is lost in the sun and maidens wail after him, but he keeps running through the Anglo-Saxon epic. And Tito Fuentes comes up, looking like a bullfighter in his tight pants and small pointed shoes. And the right field bleachers go mad with Chicanos and blacks and Brooklyn beer drinkers. Sweet Tito, sock it to him, sweet Tito. And sweet Tito puts his foot in the bucket and smacks one that don't come back at all and flees around the bases like he's escaping from the United Fruit Company. As the gringo dollar beats out the pound. And sweet Tito beats it out like he's beating out usury, not to mention fascism and anti-Semitism. And Juan Marichal comes up, and the Chicano bleachers go loco again as Juan belts the first fastball out of sight and rounds first and keeps going, and rounds second and rounds third and keeps going, and hits pay dirt to the roars of the grungy populace. As some nut presses the backstage panic button for the tape-recorded national anthem again to save the situation. But it don't stop nobody this time in their revolution round the loaded white bases. In this last of the great Anglo-Saxon epics in the territorio libre of baseball.
Oh my goodness, that was great. Wow. What do you have for us, Doctor?
I have so many poems.
So many. I thought, how about we do this? We're just about at the top of the hour, so we've got an hour left to go. Can we, I've got top 25 quotes by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and this is cherry picking, but admittedly we are also involved in a deep dive here, so I think we can throw out these quotes. There are so many wonderful ones. I thought it would be fun if you read one and I'll read one, and we'll go back and forth. How's that sound for our next? Do you have a okay look at that?
Let me see.
Okay.
Yeah, now
Squeaky
I
chair.
do. Now
Okay.
I do.
All right. Why don't you do the first one? I'll do the second one, and I'll point them out.
I am awaiting perpetually and forever a renaissance of wonder.
The state of the world calls out for poetry to save it.
Poetry is eternal graffiti, written in the heart of everyone.
Make your mind learn its way around the heart.
I am waiting for the lost music to sound again in a new rebirth of wonder.
Poetry is a naked woman, a naked man, and the distance between them.
Oh, I like that one. If you're too open-minded, your brains will fall out. And how many times have we heard this, right, from someone, but we didn't know it was Ferlinghetti.
I was just thinking this. I offered my first criticisms of the Biden administration after the bombings that took place over Syria this week. Our government is a bird with two right wings. They're devoted to the perpetuation and spread of corporate capitalism.
Absolutely. I was on television a couple of years ago, and the reporter asked me, how does it feel being on mainstream media? It's not often poets get on mainstream media, I said. Well, I think you're the dominant media. The media is still the high culture of intellectuals, writers, readers, editors, librarians, professors, artists, art critics, poets, novelists, and people who think. They are the mainstream culture, even though you may be the dominant culture.
So mainstream culture is the high culture of intellectuals, not the same as the dominant culture. If you would be a poet, write living newspapers. Be a reporter from outer space, filling filing dispatches to some supreme managing editor who believes in full disclosure and has a low tolerance for bull pucky.
I love this one. I will read it in both meanings. My country, tears of thee. My country, tears of thee.
Freedom of speech is always under attack by fascist mentality, which exists in all parts of the world, unfortunately.
There is an ecstatic mechanism in birds that makes them fly upwards in spite of worms.
We have seen the best minds of our generation destroyed by boredom at poetry readings.
Invent a new language anyone can understand.
We're reading Lawrence Ferlinghetti quotes. If you're going to be a writer, you should sit down and write in the morning and keep it up all day, every day. Charles Bukowski, no matter how drunk he got the night before or no matter how hungover he was, the next morning he was at his typewriter. Every morning, holidays too. He'd have a bottle of whiskey with him to wake up with, and that's what he believed. That's the way you become a writer, by writing. When you weren't writing, you weren't a writer.
The world is a beautiful place to be born into, if you don't mind some people dying all the time, or maybe only starving some of the time, which isn't half so bad if it isn't you.
To say one is revolutionary is a little like saying one is a Zen Buddhist. If you say you are, you probably aren't.
The art has to make it on its own, without explanations, and it's the same for poetry. If the poem or the painting has to be explained, then it's a failure in communication.
Poets, come out of your closets, open your windows, open your doors. You have been holed up too long in your closed worlds. Poetry should transport the public to higher places than other wheels can carry it.
I once started out to walk around the world, but ended up in Brooklyn. That bridge was too much for me.
I have a feeling I'm falling on rare occasions, but most of the time I have my feet on the ground. I can't help it if the ground itself is falling.
Poetry must be capable of answering the challenge of apocalyptic times, even if this means sounding apocalyptic.
We have to raise the consciousness. The only way poets can change the world is to raise the consciousness of the general populace.
I'm waiting for the war to be fought, which will make the world safe for anarchy.
Yeah. All right. I've got you turned down again for a moment while you're getting back to your seat. Those were quotes from Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who passed away this week at the age of 101. We are going to get another poem from Ferlinghetti himself. There's plenty of his material available on the World Wide Web. This is a poem called I Am Waiting, from his 1958 collection, The Year I Was Born, called A Coney Island of the Mind. And then we'll be back live. This is about 4 minutes. You're listening to KBFG, Seattle, 107.3 low power FM for North Seattle, and streaming over the World Wide Web at www.kbfgseattle.org/listen. This is our program, Open Airwaves, 9 to 11, Saturday mornings, live radio. We are celebrating Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Here's his poem, and Ferlinghetti himself reading it, I Am Waiting.
In a world wide web
I am waiting
of globalization,
by Lawrence Ferlinghetti.
A new brand
I am waiting for my case to come out.
.com millionaires have moved into San Francisco with...
Excuse me a second there. We're going to start that again. Something happened. Close that one down. We did the baseball canto. Excuse me, dear listeners. Okay, there we go. There's that other one that's playing in the background. Ferlinghetti again. I Am Waiting. Live radio, folks. Thanks for being with us. Hope you're enjoying the day.
I Am Waiting by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I am waiting for my case to come up, and I am waiting for a rebirth of wonder. And I am waiting for someone to really discover America and wail. And I am waiting for the discovery of a new symbolic western frontier. And I am waiting for the American eagle to really spread its wings and straighten up and fly right. And I am waiting for the age of anxiety to drop dead. And I am waiting for the war to be fought, which will make the world safe for anarchy. And I am waiting for the final withering away of all governments, and I am perpetually awaiting a rebirth of wonder. I am waiting for the second coming, and I am waiting for a religious revival to sweep through the state of Arizona. And I am waiting for the grapes of wrath to be stored, and I am waiting for them to prove that God is really American. And I am waiting to see God on television, piped onto church altars, if only they can find the right channel to tune in on. And I am waiting for the Last Supper to be served again, with a strange new appetizer. And I am perpetually awaiting a rebirth of wonder. I am waiting for my number to be called, and I am waiting for the Salvation Army to take over. And I am waiting for the meek to be blessed and inherit the earth without taxes. And I am waiting for forests and animals to reclaim the earth as theirs. And I am waiting for a way to be devised to destroy all nationalisms without killing anybody. And I am waiting for linnets and planets to fall like rain. And I am waiting for lovers and weepers to lie down together again in a new rebirth of wonder. I am waiting for the great divide to be crossed. And I am anxiously waiting for the secret of eternal life to be discovered by an obscure general practitioner. And I am waiting for the storms of life to be over. And I am waiting to set sail for happiness. And I am waiting for a reconstructed Mayflower to reach America with its picture story and TV rights sold in advance to the natives. And I am waiting for the lost music to sound again in the lost continent in a new rebirth of wonder. I am waiting for the day that maketh all things clear, and I am awaiting retribution for what America did to Tom Sawyer. And I am waiting for Alice in Wonderland to retransmit to me her total dream of innocence. And I am waiting for Chilled Roland to come to the final darkest tower, and I am waiting for Aphrodite to grow live arms at a final disarmament conference in a new rebirth of wonder. I am waiting to get some intimations of immortality by recollecting my early childhood, and I am waiting for the green mornings to come again. Youth's dumb green fields come back again. And I am waiting for some strains of unpremeditated art to shake my typewriter, and I am waiting to write the great indelible poem. And I am waiting for the last, long, careless rapture, and I am perpetually waiting for the fleeing lovers on the Grecian urn to catch each other up at last and embrace. And I am waiting perpetually and forever for a renaissance of wonder.
And that was Lawrence Ferlinghetti's poem, I Am Waiting, from his collection of Coney Island of the Mind, published in 1958. That was not Ferlinghetti reading. That was a person, presumably another poet, named Abu B. Rafiq, who put this up on YouTube. We are in the studio bunker, not our regular KBFG studio, but we are broadcasting from a remote location, which we can do. You could do if you join our station and work with us. We'd be happy to have your voice. But we're broadcasting live, remembering Lawrence Ferlinghetti, poet, publisher, author, painter, activist, bookstore owner, veteran, orphan, bilingual, world traveler, such an important man, and we honor him today, and thank our lucky stars that he existed at the time he did, and opened up a space for where we exist, you and I.
This Renaissance of wonder at the end of that last poem that I adore, I am waiting. I know that this Renaissance of wonder is now, is the future, is what's happening right now. I want to read a love poem by him. It's very short. Come lie with me and be my love. But I want you to know that his poems are all political poems, and they're all love poems that he's giving us. And this is for our dear friend John Hockley, who celebrates a birthday today. Happy birthday to all of you, February people.
With whom we have done some mind-bending,
some Renaissance of wonder.
Some Renaissance of wonder, yeah. And do you have something queued up after that, or
yes,
shall I?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
because I have 2 short poems, and I'm going to take this time. The next one is to poets, because it's a beautiful poem about being an acrobat.
All right. Well, then I'm just going to turn my mic down and let you go for it here,
yes,
Doctor.
I have quite a bit. I have another one that's called Underwear that I also want to read, because I really want everybody to understand that there's so much joy in this poetry, no matter how sad, how realistic it is, that this is a lesson they gave me, the beat poets, right? That they cannot take your joy away, no matter where you are.
And when you say that, of course, I want you to get to the poetry, but it reminds me to point out how influenced Ferlinghetti and his co-travelers, Kerouac, Cassidy, Ginsberg, were by jazz.
Absolutely.
Particularly the post-war bebop jazz, which a lot of people, the establishment, objected strongly against. The music, the freedom of it. Of course, the objections were often couched in racist tropes.
Of course.
And these folks embraced that freedom, and to you were talking about the joy here, and it just it reminds me of one of the first times I ever called you on the phone. What are you doing? Oh, just listening to Charlie Parker. And I thought that was so fantastic. And you want to talk about joy? Listen to Charlie Parker cut loose.
Yeah.
Take a solo, Charlie,
and of course,
just make our hearts bigger.
Just like with poetry, just like with jazz, poetry is spontaneous and can be spontaneous. And it opens up a door, not to the poetry that has to rhyme, right? But to so many other types of poetry that we now have. Anyway, I will start with my poems.
All right, take it away.
Come lie with me and be my love. Love, lie with me, lie down with me, under the cypress tree, in the sweet grasses, where the wind lieth, where the wind dieth. As night passes, come lie with me, all night with me, and have enough of kissing me, and have enough of making love, and let our 2 selves speak all night under the cypress tree without making love. And the other one that is really one of my favorites is, and also not too long, constantly risking absurdity. Constantly risking absurdity and death whenever he performs above the heads of his audience The poet, like an acrobat, climbs on rhyme to a high wire of his own making, and balancing on I-beams above sea of faces, paces his way to the other side of day, performing entrechats and slide of foot tricks and other high theatrics, and all without mistaking anything for what it may not be. For he's the super-realist who must perform, perceive, taught truth before the taking of each stance or step in his supposed advance toward that still higher perch where beauty stands and waits with gravity to start her death-defying leap. And he, a little Charlie Chaplin man, who may or may not catch her fair eternal form, spread-eagled in the empty air of existence. Isn't that beautiful? And of course the poet spread eagle, right? The poet, the acrobat, the poet, linking all the arts together. The poet with a performance, with an acrobat, with a circus, all of this. Okay, I will read Underwear. I didn't get much sleep last night thinking about underwear. Have you ever stopped to consider underwear in the abstract? When you really dig into it, some shocking problems are raised. Underwear is something we all have to deal with. Everyone wears some kind of underwear. Even Indians wear underwear. Even Cubans wear underwear. The Pope wears underwear, I hope. The governor of Louisiana wears underwear. I saw him on TV. He must have had tight underwear. He squirmed a lot. Underwear can really get you in a bind. You have seen the underwear ads for men and women. So alike but so different. Women's underwear holds things up. Men's underwear holds things down. Underwear is one thing men and women do have in common. Underwear is all we have between us. You have been the three-color pictures with crotches, and you have seen, the three-color pictures with crotches encircled to show the areas of extra strength, with three-way stretch, promising full freedom of action. Don't be deceived. It's all based on the two-party system, which doesn't allow much freedom of choice the way things are set up. America, in its underwear, struggles through the night. Underwear controls everything in the end. Take foundation garments, for instance. They are really fascist forms of underground government, making people believe something, but the truth-telling you want, you can or can't do. Did you ever try to get around a girdle? Perhaps nonviolent action is the only answer. Did Gandhi wear a girdle? Did Lady Macbeth wear a girdle? Was that why Macbeth murdered sleep? And the spot she was always rubbing, was it really her underwear? Modern Anglo-Saxon ladies must have huge guilt complexes, always washing and washing and washing out damned spot. Underwear with spots, very suspicious. Underwear with bulges, very shocking. Underwear on clotheslines, a great flag of freedom. Someone has escaped his underwear. Maybe naked somewhere.
Yeah. We are reading poems by Lawrence Ferlinghetti and celebrating his life. The great poet publisher, painter, activist, mentor, exemplar, founder of City Lights Books in San Francisco. In the bunker studio with me is Dr. Gabriella Gutierrez y Muhs. I'm Eric Muhs, and we are live on KBFG 107.3 low power FM for North Seattle, and streaming over the World Wide Web at www.kbfgseattle.org/listen. This is our open airwaves program, live every Saturday morning from 9 to 11. Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Do you have more you'd like to dial up right now, or we could? I've got things that we could go to. If you.
I have more, but I can save a couple of joyful ones for the end.
Yeah, let's do that. So sitting here, I was got a message from my good friend Ed, who has retired down to Arizona. Late 70s, he says. A friend and I are on a 2-month hitch around America. Late 70s. Interestingly enough, that's what I was doing too. Taking him to various sites of literary and beat significance. Gary Snyder's Lookout in the North Cascades. Kerouac was there too. Meet Ken Kesey at a play in Eugene. Then in San Francisco, we hit City Lights Books, and as we peruse the shelves, there is Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I sheepishly introduce myself and express what an honor it is to meet him. He lifts his cap and says, "Honor to meet you, young man." I wore the t-shirt from there until it faded into air. Yeah, I had some of those t-shirts. Thanks, Ed, and good to hear from you. We can't really talk about Ferlinghetti without mentioning that one time he got arrested. I don't know if it was the only time he got arrested, but it's certainly in some ways the most notable. We're going to talk about his fellow traveler and poet friend Allen Ginsberg and his poem Howl, also known as Howl for Carl Solomon. Written by Ginsberg in 1954 to 55 and published in a 56 collection, Howl and Other Poems. It was first performed at a very famous gathering of poets, seminal gathering, and upon the poem's release in this published version from City Lights, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and the bookstore's manager, Shigeyoshi Mauro, were charged with disseminating obscene literature, and both were arrested. In October of 1957, Judge Clayton Horn ruled that the poem was not obscene. Fascinating development. The poem was first performed at the Six Gallery in San Francisco. The reading was conceived by Wally Hedrick, a painter and co-founder of the Six, who approached Ginsberg in 1955 and asked him to organize a poetry reading. At first, Ginsberg refused, but once he'd written a rough draft of Howl, he changed his bleepin' mind, as he put it. Ginsberg was ultimately responsible for inviting the readers, Gary Snyder, Philip Lamontia, Philip Whalen, Michael McClure, and Kenneth Rexroth, and writing the invitation. Howl was the second to the last reading, and was considered by most in attendance the highlight of the reading. Many considered it the beginning of a new movement, and the reputation of Ginsberg and those associated with the Six Gallery reading spread throughout the city and throughout the world. In response to Ginsberg's reading, McClure wrote, "Ginsberg read on to the end of the poem, which left us standing in wonder, or cheering and wondering, but knowing at the deepest level that a barrier had been broken, that a human voice and body had been hurled against the harsh wall of America." Jack Kerouac gave a first-hand, slightly novelized account of the Six Gallery performance in his 1958 novel, The Dharma Bumps. Anyway, I followed the whole gang of howling poets to the reading at Gallery 6 that night, which was, among other important things, the night of the birth of the San Francisco Poetry Renaissance. Everyone was there. It was a mad night, and I was the one who got things jumping by going around collecting dimes and quarters from the rather stiff audience standing around the gallery, and coming back with 3 huge gallon jugs of California Burgundy and getting them all piffed, so that by 11 o'clock, when Alva Goldbrook was reading his poem Whale, drunk with arms outspread, everyone was yelling, "Go, go, go," like a jam session, and old Reinhard, the father of the Frisco poetry scene, was wiping his tears in gladness. And we are going to actually play a version of Ginsberg reading the poem, and this is the part where we have to talk about our FCC license at KBFG. We do not want to risk the wrath of the federal government, and so if you have any tender ears or you are sensitive yourself, we apologize in advance. I don't find anything in this first part of the Howl text that would qualify for George Carlin's 7 dirty words, but there is some explicit, and I do not intend to play it all the way through, but the goal here is to give you a sense of the jazz of Ginsberg's reading and give you a feel for that. Again, fair warning about language and ideas here. As McClure said, Ginsberg is going to throw himself up against the wall of America. Here's the part of the first part of Hal Allen Ginsberg reading.
Howl for Carl Solomon. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo and the machinery of night, who, poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high, sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats, floating across the tops of cities, contemplating jazz, who bared their brains to heaven under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs, illuminated, who passed through universities with radiant, cool eyes, hallucinating Arkansas and Blake light tragedy among the scholars of war, who were expelled from the academies for crazy and publishing obscene odes on the windows of the skull, who cowered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets and listening to the terror through the wall, who got busted in their pubic beards returning through Laredo with a belt of marijuana for New York, who ate fire and paint hotels or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley death, or purgatoried their torsos night after night with dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares.
Oh, that's about where I kind of cut it off for radio play. One of my first friends that I met when I came to Seattle as an 18-year-old gave me a copy of Howl. Everyone should have a copy of Howl. I know that's a bit of a utopian fantasy, but the monumental nature of this poem and Ferlinghetti's role in helping publish it and making it available and putting it in the public sphere
went to prison for it.
No, the charges were dropped. He did not.
No, but he was arrested.
He might have spent some nights in jail. I'm not clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
But just a phenomenal poem, and I was struck in revisiting this. It's been at least a few years, if not a few decades, how apropos it is
today
of the United States of America right the heck now. Nothing in the spirit of what it's like to live in this country has changed. Not a bit. You have another one by Ginsberg queued up?
Yes, and I don't think this is X-rated.
I think I've done pretty well in
you were very good.
substituting out the words that do come up. I think we have to take. It's not poetic license. It's FCC, Federal Communications Commission license. If something filthy comes up, don't say any filthy words.
I'm gonna try to, but it's so hard, and it's it's censoring this poetry. But at the same time, we want you to know that we owe so much to these poets. Allen Ginsberg, I've absolutely adored him because he was the first one who raised up to defend Demetria Martinez. Demetria Martinez was a poet, is a poet. She's still a poet, and we're publishing her poetry in one of my two of my anthologies actually. But she was accompanying a Lutheran minister who was crossing a Salvadoran and a Guatemalan woman across the U.S.-Mexico border, bringing them because they were going to be killed and they were pregnant. And she was covering this for the National Catholic Reporter, which is the most far to the left national newspaper for Catholics. And as you know, Catholics were very, very active during the sanctuary movement, as were Lutherans. And so this Lutheran minister asked her to go with him and cover this, because she was a journalist, and she was imprisoned. She was actually in a trial that would have put her 25 years in prison had she been convicted. And it was actually Allen Ginsberg who organized the poets on behalf of her and raised funding, raised money to get her the best lawyers that she could get. That's very important to me, because it didn't matter to these men what color, what culture, what religion you were. It's the kind America. It's the have a beautiful day America. It's the hippie America that they represent. That I'm very proud of. I feel very privileged to have been part of that America of the Central Coast of California that welcomed everybody, that made you feel special. If you were any one of the others, nowhere else, had I been anywhere else in the United States, nowhere else was I made to feel that because I was different, I was special. But in Santa Cruz, in San Francisco. So these people are very important in establishing a culture of acceptance and difference. And I want to read this poem. Demetria Martinez, the poet I mentioned before, has a version of this poem, and she's dedicated it to Allen Ginsberg, and it's called Wanted. This one is called America by Allen Ginsberg. America, I've given you all, and now I'm nothing. America, $2.27, January 17, 1956. I can't stand my own mind. America, when will we end the human war? Go F yourself with your atom bomb. I don't feel good. Don't bother me. I won't write my poem till I'm in my right mind. America, when will you be angelic? When will you take off your clothes? When will you look at yourself through the grave? When will you be worthy of your million Trotskyites? America, why are your libraries full of tears? And of course this could be tears also. America, when will you send your eggs to India? I'm sick of your insane demands. When can I go into the supermarket and buy what I need with my good looks? America, after all, it is you and I who are perfect, not the next world. Your machinery is too much for me. You make me want to be a saint. There must be some other way to settle this argument. Burroughs, in 10 years, I don't think he'll come back. It's sinister. Are you being sinister? Or is this some form of practical joke? I'm trying to come to the point. I refuse to give up my obsession. America, stop pushing. I know what I'm doing. America, the plum blossoms are falling. I haven't read the newspapers for months. Every day somebody goes on trial for murder. America, I feel sentimental about the Wobblies. America, I used to be a communist when I was a kid. I'm not sorry. I smoke marijuana every chance I get. I sit in my house for days on end and stare at the roses in the closet. When I go to Chinatown, I get drunk and never get laid. My mind is made up. There's going to be trouble. You should have seen me reading Marx. My psychoanalyst thinks I'm perfectly right. I won't say the Lord's Prayer. I have mystical visions and cosmic vibrations. America, I still haven't told you what I did to Uncle Max after he came over from Russia. I'm addressing you. Are you going to let your emotional life be run by Time magazine? I'm obsessed by Time magazine. I read it every week. Its cover stares at me every time I sling past the corner candy store. I read it in the basement of the Berkeley Public Library. It's always telling me about responsibility. Businessmen are serious. Movie producers are serious. Everybody's serious but me. It occurs to me that I am America. I am talking to myself again. Asia is rising against me. I haven't got a Chinaman's chance. I'd better consider my national resources. My national resources consist of 2 joints of marijuana, millions of genitals, and unpublished private literature that jet planes 1,400 miles an hour and 25,000 mental institutions. I say nothing about my prisons nor the millions of underprivileged who live in my flower pots under the light of 500 suns. I have abolished the whorehouses of France. Tangier is the next to go. My ambition is to be president, despite the fact that I am Catholic. America, how can I write a holy litany in your silly mood? I will continue like Henry Ford. My strophes are as individual as his. Automobiles, more so, they're all different sexes. America, I will sell you strophes, 2,500 apiece, 500 down on your old strophe. America, free Tom Mooney. America, save the Spanish loyalists. America, Sacco and Vansanti must not die. America, I am the Scottsboro Boys. America, when I was 7, Mama took me to communist cell meetings. They sold us garbanzos, a handful per ticket. A ticket cost a nickel, and the speeches were free. Everybody was angelic and sentimental about workers. It was all so sincere. You have no idea what a good thing the party was in 1835. Scott Nearing was a grand old man, a real mensch. Mother Bloor, the Silk Strikers, Ewing Wilshby made me cry. I once saw the Yiddish orator Israel Amter playing. Everybody must have been a spy. America, you don't really want to go to war. America, it's them bad Russians, them Russians, and them Chinamen, and them Russians. The Russia wants to eat us alive. The Russia's power mad. She wants to take our cars from our own garages. Her wants to grab Chicago. Her needs Reader's Digest. Her wants are auto plants in Siberia. Him, big bureaucracy running our filling stations. That no good, huh? Him, make Indians learn read. Him, need big black N. Huh? Her, make us all work 16 hours a day. Help! America, this is quite serious. America, this is the impression I get from looking in the television set. America, is this correct? I'd better get right down to the job. It's true, I don't want to join the army or turn lathes in precision parts factories. I'm nearsighted and psychopathic anyway. America, I'm putting my queer shoulder to the wheel. And this is from 1956, Berkeley, January 17. And it was published as, I think, America, his collected poems.
Thank you so much. By Lawrence Ferlinghetti.
No, this is Allen Ginsberg.
Oh, that was Allen Ginsberg.
Yes, yes.
We are honoring the life and work of the poet, publisher, activist, painter, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who died this week at the age of 101. I'm on the radio with Dr. Gabriella Gutierrez y Muhs, and I'm Eric Muhs, and this is Open Airwaves on KBFG 107.3 low power FM for North Seattle and streaming over the World Wide Web at www.kbfgseattle.org/listen. While Dr. Gutierrez catches her breath for a moment, I have a short poem, Ferlinghetti reading. So I'll just turn you down, and this will be about a minute long, and we are less than 15 minutes from the end of our show, so we've got a couple of other short Ferlinghetti things queued up, but she's just taking a drink of coffee here, and here's Ferlinghetti reading Pity the Nation. This is relatively recently. This is him reading as an 88-year-old in 2007.
Pity the nation whose people are sheep and whose shepherds mislead them. Pity the nation whose leaders are liars, whose sages are silenced, and whose bigots haunt the airwaves. Pity the nation that raises not its voice, except to praise conquerors and acclaim the bully as hero, and aims to rule the world with force and by torture. Pity the nation that knows no other language but its own, and no other culture but its own. Pity the nation whose breath is money, and sleeps the sleep of the too well-fed. Pity the nation, oh, pity the people who will allow their rights to erode, and their freedoms to be washed away. My country, tears of thee, sweet land of liberty.
Lawrence Ferlinghetti reading Pity the Nation. A couple more poems, and then I think we're going to be pretty close. We'll see where we are at that point. but I've got some Ferlinghetti inspired, not just inspired, but deeply connected music, maybe to see us out. So, yeah, what have you got?
Well, a little bit more fun, right? This is one of my favorites. Don't Let the Horse Eat the Violin. and Pity the Nation is the one you just is another classical that I had, but I'm so glad he read it. That's also many, a favorite of many. My friend Norma Cantu, the great poet, she also she sent me Pity the Nation last week, so I was glad to hear that. So this is Don't Let That Horse Eat That Violin. Don't let that horse eat that violin, cried Chagall's mother. But he kept right on painting and became famous and kept on painting the horse with violin in mouth. And when he finally finished it, he jumped up upon the horse and rode away, waving the violin. And then, with a low bow, gave it to the first naked nude he ran across. And there were no strings attached. I love that last line. No strings attached to the nude, to the horse, to the violin. Wonderful.
No strings attached to my imagination or your imagination.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorites. Another one is the penny candy store beyond the L. The penny candy store beyond the L is where I first fell in love with unreality. Jelly beans glowed in the semi-gloom of that September afternoon. A cat upon the counter moved among the licorice sticks and Tootsie Rolls and, oh boy, gum. Outside the leaves were falling as they died. A wind had blown away the sun. A girl ran in. Her hair was rainy. Her breasts were breathless. In the little room, outside the leaves were falling, and they cried, too soon, too soon. That beautiful.
Wonderful. We have just enough time to get in a couple of things here. I would like to have Ferlinghetti read again. This is a poem called Allen Ginsberg Dying, his reflections on his friend. Haven't screened it. I'm hoping there's no bad language, but just discovered it right now, looking around. Mm-hmm. We hope for the best.
Allen Ginsberg is dying. It's in all the papers. It's on the evening news. A great poet is dying, but his voice won't die. His voice is on the land. In lower Manhattan, in his own bed, he is dying. There is nothing to do about it. He is dying the death that everyone dies. He is dying the death of the poet. He has a telephone in his hand, and he calls everyone from his bed in lower Manhattan. All around the world, late at night, the telephone is ringing. This is Allen, the voice says. Allen Ginsberg calling. How many times have they heard it over the long, great years? He doesn't have to say Ginsberg. All around the world, in the world of poets, there is only one Allen. I wanted to tell you, he says. He tells them what's happening, what's coming down on him. Death the dark lover going down on him. His voice goes by satellite over the land, over the Sea of Japan, where he once stood naked, trident in hand, like a young Neptune, a young man with black beard standing on a stone beach. It is high tide, and the seabirds cry. The waves break over him now, and the seabirds cry on the San Francisco waterfront. There is a high wind. There are great white caps lashing the Embarcadero. Alan is on the telephone. His voice is on the waves. I am reading Greek poetry. The sea is in it. Horses weep in it. The horses of Achilles weep in it. Here by the sea in San Francisco, where the waves weep, they make a sibilant sound, a sibylline sound. Alan, they whisper, Alan.
Oh, oh, that brought a knot to my throat.
So appropriate for ending this show and celebrating the great life, the monumental life of poet, painter, activist, publisher Lawrence Ferlinghetti. We've just got about a few minutes left. I'll do one more station ID, KBFG 107.3 low power FM for North Seattle, and streaming over the World Wide Web at www.kbfgseattle.org/listen. This has been our Saturday morning program live in the studio, Open Airwaves. I'm here with Dr. Gabriella Gutierrez y Muhs. I'm Eric Muhs, and we are celebrating Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Doctor, last thoughts?
Yes.
Last stanzas?
I want to read a very short poem, A White Horse with a Red Rose. A rare vision, a white horse with a red rose, admirable and attractive, a possibility of myriad imaginations. This beautiful horse has a mission to accomplish, an effort towards an objective, a romantic goal of lasting love. The world is full of magical visions, waiting gently and patiently for the human beings and animals to recognize the beauty of relationships, the joy of exquisite feelings, the faithful, warm partnership between man and horse is as old as hills. The horse, speeding his way through hills, forests, perhaps to express and share a passionate love message, biting and clenching on to a stem with a red rose. Whether the rose is for his master's love or his own lady love is a mystery. But any sweet message of love with a rose is a wondrous joy forever.
Thanks so much for being with us, listeners. Thank you, Dr. Gutierrez. I think when we celebrate Ferlinghetti, we celebrate freedom. I'm going to leave you with a song. We won't get all the way through it. This is another Bob Dylan. And in thinking about this song, and having read all this poetry, I hear the rhythms of Ferlinghetti and Ginsberg in Dylan's work, but I think if you consider Ferlinghetti's contribution, anytime you have looked around your own reality here in this country and found meaning where there wasn't any stated, where if you found metaphor, if you found a reality, you owe something to the intellectual tradition, the intellectual table set by Ferlinghetti. So important. So Mr. Dillon's going to see us out, and we won't get through the entire song. We'll be out right at the top of the hour. Thanks for listening. Another host will be back next week, but we'll try to bring you some more poetry next time we're up. Thank you, Dr. Gutierrez y Muhs. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, KBFG. Lawrence Ferlinghetti for freedom. Here's Bob Dylan. Hard rain is gonna fall.